I'm Martin Cragg, work on the talent side of our of the game. Mark Jeffries, who's kindly agreed to present today, he knows lacrosse. He sits on our performance advisory board with Jane, and kind of helps shape ideas. The most notable one recently is advising on how we should look at reintroducing activities and players to the academies. So he's helped inform our decisions on that lot. In his day job, he's director of sport at Birmingham City University, and his background is in talent and performance, with particularly Welsh rugby and the sevens side of the game. And I'm sure Mark will provide a bit more information there. Well, he's been so good in offering not only his academic ideas, but more importantly, how we can apply those ideas and use his wealth of knowledge to get started. So I'll hand over to Mark, and if you've got any questions, put them in the chat. And also, just for everyone's benefit, we are recording this, so if you don't want to kind of be seen, just black out your camera for us as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. Welcome, everybody. Really looking forward to the session this evening. The plan is that I'll present just some ideas, really, around creating a positive learning and a motivational environment for about 20-25 minutes or so. But what I'd be really keen to do then is get some conversation going, get some chat going. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat bar, and Martin is going to manage those for us, and then we'll interject and have some conversation. I'll say right from the word go, these are some ideas, and it'll be really good to have a conversation to see what might suit you, what might not suit you, and then really help to shape the practice that hopefully can help going forward to create this positive learning and motivational environment. So here we go. One of the things that I've always been struck with when thinking about creating the right environment is, how do we actually develop that environment, and how do we plan for it? From our early coaching experiences, what we often plan is the content of our sessions, but often we don't really think about how we're going to plan for creating this right environment. So hopefully what we talk about this evening will help give us some ideas about what we need to think about when we are planning, just to make sure that we're not planning just for the content, even though the content is really important in creating that environment. But what are the other things that we need to think about to make sure that everybody in the session has the most positive experience possible? So I actually found this when looking at some other stuff that I was researching. I found this on the World Rugby website, and I actually liked a lot of what it said. So if you want to find out any more about this, have a little look on their webpage. But it was the sort of things that we need to think about when we are going to create this positive learning environment. And I've made a little acronym of some of the things that they talked about on there. But the first thing, obviously, it must be is safe. And I think that as coaches these days, we really have this duty of care to our participants to make sure that environment is a safe environment. And when I say safe, I really mean everything that comes under that heading. So it's not just making sure that people are free from injury and free from danger, but it's when we read about what's happened in a lot of sports these days, it's everything from bullying, it's everything from doping, everything that might have a negative effect on our participants. We need to think about to make sure that they don't experience any of those negative things in any of our sessions. And what do we need to think about in order to be able to create that environment? So I think the next one is really important, and that is all our sessions must be purposeful. What are we trying to create? What are we trying to do within our sessions? Where are we going? What is the direction that we're going in? And what are we trying to achieve? And having worked with a lot of coaches over the years, I think we often tend to be reactive, and we might react to a particular competition, a particular win, a particular loss, a particular thing that's happened. We often react to something that's gone wrong in a game, that's something that didn't work out quite the way we wanted it to. And I think there's definitely a place for that. But what I really encourage coaches to do is think about where you want to get to with the group that you're working with. Think of that end point and work backwards rather than working step by step. What do we do for the next session? What do we do for the next session? Let's think further ahead. Where do I want to be in 6 months' time? Where do I want to be in a year's time? What does the culture look like when we get there? And how do we plan to get there? And let's work back from that. Certainly, if our sessions are going to be purposeful, they also need to be active. We need to be able to create an environment where people are active for the majority of the session. And obviously, when you're working with youngsters, getting them involved in the game, small-sided games, etc., is a really good way of doing that. Maybe less queuing to get involved in a drill. Get them involved in small-sided games so that they're really involved and experiencing the game, experiencing making decisions, etc., etc., so that they are getting the most out of the relatively small amount of time that they spend with you as a coach. I think the next one is really important. We'll look at a couple of reasons why later on that this next one is important. But our participants must feel that they're connected with us, and we really need to feel that we're connected with them. If we're not working in an environment where we are connected with our participants, then probably there needs to be a little bit of improvement in that environment. We need to feel that we're working together, and they should feel that they're involved in this development as well. It's not just about the coach dictating everything that happens. It's about our participants being connected with us and having some say in how we move forward together. And lastly, sessions should be enjoyable. Now, that doesn't mean, in my eyes, that they can't work hard in those sessions, because actually you can get an awful lot of enjoyment out of working hard and achieving something. So often when I speak to coaches and talk about enjoyable sessions, they think that everything must be fun and games and you can't work hard. I would say actually working hard can be very enjoyable, because when you achieve something that you've worked hard for, then there's definitely enjoyment in that. One thing that is really important to think about when we are planning for creating this positive environment is to recognize that there will be individual differences. And certainly that is one of the difficulties we have when we work in a team sport, because we are coaching a team, but we're also coaching those individuals within the team. And they will be learning at different rates. There will be physical differences. There will be all those differences that are identified there. And so we must think about, okay, well, I am coaching the team, but how am I going to connect with and actually make an impact on each individual? And sometimes it's really not easy, but we really must think about what we're doing and how that is impacting on each individual that attends our sessions. Now, as Martin said earlier, I've been involved in coaching rugby, and sometimes there'll be 30, even 40 people in a session. And actually making a difference for each individual is not easy. And I'll be first to admit there are times when I've definitely not achieved it. But it's really made me reflect on what those individuals come to our sessions for, and how we can plan by doing individual work, by doing small team work, larger unit work, and obviously working as a whole team as well, how we can develop our sessions to make sure that it really does impact on each of those individuals. But thinking about those individual differences and really identifying what those differences are, especially when you're working with a group over a longer period, is really, really important. It's also really important, in my eyes, to create an environment where people are happy to fail. It's really important that we're never going to get everything right every single time. And so it's really important that when people do fail within our sessions, they feel supported, they feel safe, they're happy to fail and happy to take on the learning which has made them fail. And therefore they will learn from each time they do that. And therefore, hopefully, the number of times that they will fail will get less and less, and they will really start to succeed. But it is really important that they feel safe and feel supported, and that's something that we can really do in terms of our coaching, in terms of the environment that we create. It's worth people having a go. We need to beat opponents, we need to beat our opposing teams. If we are scared to fail, we'll never be creative. And if we're never creative, we won't do those things that are going to be the really good bits about being successful. So it's really important that we're happy to fail. I'll touch very briefly on a couple of different theories that hopefully will help support some of our thinking in terms of developing this positive environment. And the first one is achievement goal theory. And there are a number of different labels that are put on the different climates that you can have within our sessions. One is mastery-based climate, the other is performance-based climate. Although sometimes it's not necessarily called performance-based, it's called other things that are related to what we see as ego involvement. But in essence, when you create a mastery-based climate, it's all about getting better. It's all about learning your skills, learning your decision making, learning everything within your session, so that the emphasis within a session is actually about getting better. Whereas in a performance-based climate, the emphasis is more on, have we won the game? And that's social comparison. How are we doing against others? And I've always been an advocate of the mastery-based climate, because if we're always looking to get better and always looking to get that next bit of learning under our belt and continually improving, then chances are we will create a winning environment anyway. But we win because of our learning. We don't just win at any cost. And we are not just happy because we've won. We are happy because we've won because we've actually performed well. So a mastery-based climate is one where the emphasis is on effort, individual improvement, and continually getting better. And therefore, within achievement goal theory, how an individual defines success or failure, if you have a task goal orientation, that mastery orientation, it is all about improvement in your skill and improvement in your decision making, etc. Whereas an ego goal orientation is purely where we look at the outcome and whether we've won or lost or not. So, as I say, from my point of view, I've always been an advocate of the task goal orientation and that mastery climate. Another theory that I just wanted to touch on as well is a theory called self-determination theory. And it's really a theory around motivation. But I think that when we create an exceptional learning environment, motivation is really important within that. And how we think about motivating our participants on a continual basis is really, really important. They need to be continually learning, but they need to be continually motivated as well. So motivation is a multidimensional construct. We need to have participants who are always looking to get better, always looking to learn, always looking to improve their current ability. And they need to be motivated in order to do that. So self-determination theory looks at three main elements to help motivate their and meet their needs. And those three items are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And the next slide will look at exactly what those look at. So in terms of autonomy, our participants need to know that they have some choice in what they do and they are in control of their own behavior. So a coach who continually and only ever tells their participants what they are going to do and never involves them in that process is probably going to miss out on this element of autonomy. When I was working at University of Gloucestershire before I moved to Birmingham, some of my colleagues were involved in a study around self-determination theory, and what they found was that the younger our participants are, the happier they are to actually let the coach decide what they want to do. But as they grow older, they want to be involved. They want to be involved in some of that decision making as to how the environment looks, how we play as a team, how we design our training sessions, etc. And coaches who involve their participants tend to be successful in keeping their participants motivated. In terms of competence, they need to feel that they are becoming more competent at what they do. And going back to the enjoyment element that we mentioned earlier, actually, by becoming more competent at what you're doing is a way that you can enjoy that session. And so I've known lots of people who've dropped out of sport over the years, and they've said that you know they've gone to sessions and had lots of fun with their friends, but they haven't actually felt that they're getting better, and so dropped out of the sport. They need to feel that they are consistently getting better, whether it is at a particular skill, whether it is at the physiological side of their sport, or whether it is at decision making or the team-based element of their sport. It's really important that they do that. And the final element within self-determination theory is relatedness. And that goes back to that connectedness that I mentioned earlier. And it's not just the connection to you as a coach, but also it's that connection to others within the session as well. And if we look at social learning theory, for example, the participants will learn obviously from you as a coach, but they will also learn from watching each other. If we think of some sports like skateboarding or some of the winter sports like snowboarding, etc., often those sports don't actually have a coach, and they'll actually engage and learn just from watching each other. So that connectedness with others within the group is really important in terms of that social learning, as well as their motivation to keep coming back, to keep wanting to get better, etc. So generally, people are intrinsically motivated by tasks that allow them to demonstrate competency, they have control over, and allow them to feel related and connected to others. So if we think about self-determination theory and think about those three things when we're planning, hopefully we'll create this motivational environment where our participants are able to learn. And the more that they feel that, hopefully the more effective the learning will be. Something that has been talked about a lot recently over the last few years is mindset. And I think it is important that we understand how mindset affects the learning environment. But it's also really important, in my view, to think about how mindset can actually be affected by coaches and what we can do to actually create a positive mindset within the individuals that we're coaching. So mindset was really developed by Carol Dweck, and has been utilized widely across a lot of sports. And it's basically based around two constructs. The one is a fixed mindset, and the second is a growth mindset. And Dweck did a lot of experiments around identifying these two constructs. And what she found is that people who have a fixed mindset think that a number of traits are fixed and cannot be changed. And she did a lot of work around IQ and intelligence. And that people thought, basically, if I'm born with a low IQ, there's nothing I can do about it. Whereas people with a growth mindset actually think intelligence and a lot of other traits, like ability in sport, can be changed and developed. And a lot of the work that I have done around talent has identified people with either with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. So people with a fixed mindset think that skills are something that you're born with. They think that challenges are something to avoid, etc. You'll be able to read the slides, so see what it says. But actually, people with a growth mindset basically feel that if you work hard, you are able to improve. Whether it's skills, challenges, efforts, feedback, setbacks, if you work hard, you're able to improve whatever it is that you're trying to do. As I said, a lot of my work in talent has identified people with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, and actually, the word talent has been part of the problem. In the fact that people think that talent is a fixed trait and you either have talent or you don't. And so I've come across a number of participants in a range of sports, and I'm sure many of you will have as well, who have been told from a fairly young age that they are talented, and it has often caused them to have a fixed mindset, to think, well, I'm talented now, I don't really have to work hard because I've got this trait called talent. Whereas people who have a growth mindset often think, actually, I have this gift called talent. If I work really hard, I can get sort of even better. And so how you deal with a trait such as a skill or a trait such as talent will often be dependent upon whether you have a fixed or growth mindset. And I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that actually coaches can have an effect on whether people have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And from my point of view, a lot of that is based around the language that we use and how we deliver feedback. So as an example, if we have two people who played a really good game, and we say to one, that was a great game, you seem to play this game so easily, you look really talented, and you know, just everything seems to be there, you may well be creating that fixed mindset. Whereas if you say to somebody else, you know what, you really worked hard for that performance today, you put yourself in positions where you were able to have a little more time to make those crucial decisions, you really worked hard to get into space, to be able to exploit it, and put a lot of emphasis on the effort that's involved, then it's more likely that the participants are going to develop a growth mindset, because they then associate hard work and effort with performance. So there is something that we can do as parents and coaches to help with that. So I think the environment that we create is very important, and I've seen this, and you've probably seen this when talking about a lot of different areas, especially around sports psychology and the development of a positive environment. You know, when a flower isn't blooming, you don't just look at the flower, you look at the environment that the flower is situated in. And it's really important that we do that, whether that flower is getting not enough water, too much water, what is the soil like, etc. That's exactly how we need to view the environment that we're creating for our participants. Are we creating that environment that has got that nurturing soil? Are we giving them the right amount of water? Are we giving them the right amount of water at the right time to allow the participants to flourish? It's really important that we look at that. And I think this is my last slide. Often when we create that environment, we need to think about the interaction between challenge and support. And to a certain extent, this goes back to the comment that I made earlier about being happy to fail. So if we look at support on the upright axis and challenge on the lower axis, and look at the matrix that's developed, if we create an environment that has low challenge and we give low support, then that is likely to be a very stagnant environment. But if we create a lot of high challenge but don't provide the support, then that is going to be an unrelenting environment for our participants. If we provide high support but don't provide sufficient challenge, then our participants will just become very, very comfortable and might not learn a lot. But if we provide that high level of challenge and provide that high level of support, that's where we really see a predictive environment taking place. So it's, again, when we're planning our sessions, it's really worth thinking about that. Oh, so this is my last slide, so apologies for that. Yeah, so creating a motivational environment where people are happy and able to learn is really around setting up a climate or environment that promotes the development of a task or mastery orientation and learning beliefs rather than an ego orientation and capacity beliefs. So really concentrate on continual improvement. Kaizen is often called in some areas. So really think about, how do I continually look to get better, and how do I look to get better as an individual, and how do I look to get my team better as well. Okay, hopefully that didn't take too long.
I'll jump on with you, Mark. Oh,
Brilliant.
As ever, when we have chats, my brain starts going, we can do this, we can do that. Let's how does that work? So I've got a few questions, but I think if anyone would like to jump in before me, that'll be quite useful. Feel free to jump in or raise your hand, anyone.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for that. I've got dodgy Wi-Fi, so sorry if I cut out mid-question. It happened in the last call. Really fascinating. Something that came to mind is, especially with youth athletes, what is the best way to challenge a fixed mindset that's already embedded in a youth athlete? And within the same group, how would you recommend to utilise a growth mindset to influence and cultivate similar mindset in others to promote a healthier environment?
I think it is really thinking about the language that you use with the environment. With the individual that has got that fixed mindset. It's really about, I think, positive reinforcement of effort, really thinking about some challenges that might put them slightly out of their comfort zone, but just making sure that support is there, and really sort of making that consistent effort with the language that we use, and that consistent sort of praise around effort, etc. And I think for the second part of your question, when you have a number of individuals who have that growth mindset. I think it is around developing that challenge on a continual basis, and I think it's identifying the level of challenge that is needed to create that. If you make things too hard, then they may lose a little bit of their motivation. But if we just put them out of their comfort zone, in a position where they know with support they can achieve, they can learn, that's where the fun happens. Really, is it just where they're slightly out of their comfort zone. Is that okay for you, Chloe?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I very much agree. If you kind of push them that bit out of that comfort zone, gain their confidence, and then hopefully their outside of their comfort zone will then be further away than what it originally was. So kind of pushing it and developing it every time.
Absolutely. And a lot of people talk about feeling comfortable being uncomfortable, and actually thinking about, well, how do I, put them in a position where they are going to have to make decisions, that they're going to have to do all the things that they're going to need to do when they perform, but they need to feel comfortable doing that. So I use an awful lot of scenarios when I coach, and just as an example, and it's not just because I'm Welsh, but one thing that I often work on, for example, is, right, we're going to play for 10 minutes. We've got 10 minutes left in a game. We're 3 points up. We're down to 14 men. We've now got to deal with that situation. So it's creating scenarios that make them think, make them slightly uncomfortable, because they have to deal with whatever situation you're creating for them. And I think that often helps.
We've got a question from Stephen Ball.
Craigie, hi, thanks. Just unmuting. Yeah, Mark, fantastic. I mean, at Birmingham, one of your, it seems a vast task looking at what you're trying to achieve, but you'll be trying to adopt your strategy right from your elite teams right down to the social participants, in whether that be a fifth or sixth team across a range of sports. So presumably it's a constant challenge to keep reviewing all activities with your coaching staff. I mean, how do you cope with that?
I think it's through constant communication, really, Steve. I think that having meetings with the coaching staff on a regular basis, but not just within sports. I find it really useful to have meetings with staff across sports, and actually they get to challenge each other. But also there's an awful lot of support there as well, because many of the challenges they're facing are very similar, and actually even from those more recreational athletes, even up to some of the better teams, we still have very similar problems going on. So, and then it's how we communicate. So obviously having meetings, and actually the pandemic has been really good for developing this type of environment. But then it's WhatsApp groups, it's Facebook pages, it's whatever you can. And again, I think it's really important that relationship between challenge and support is there for coaches as well as our participants. And coaches need to feel that they are supported. So when they do have a question, when they do have a problem, actually they're happy to ask that question. So I hope that helps, Steve.
Yeah, no, thanks. Cheers.
Mark, if I can just jump in, because I can't keep silent. So I'm just aware that when I rock up to lots of junior lacrosse, I'm senior lacrosse, I see the same thing over and over and over again. And the players, male, female, boys, girls, they are very comfortable. So, you know, I'm just aware they do a line drill. I don't like line drills, but that's just the way I am, you know, and they're sending the ball nice and comfortable to everybody's stick, and everybody looks fantastic. And then the first 5 minutes of a game, you suddenly see a ball thrown down to somebody's ankle, and we've lost possession, you know. And I just play devil's advocate a little bit, and I just want to say, throw in some chaos, but support them in that chaos.
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that training should replicate what you're going to come across in a game. And if you don't train for competition, then it's unlikely that you're going to be able to deal effectively with the competition. And so absolutely, you know, games are chaotic. And again, in rugby, we'll work on counter-attack, for example. We'll set up line out, and we'll just kick the ball and say, right, play. And they've got to react. They've got to just turn their minds to what is in front of them. And actually, I find that when I work with youngsters, they love that because they're playing the game. And they don't realize that they're learning a lot of those decision-making skills that are so important as they develop. But they're doing it through gameplay. And so, no, I totally agree, Jane.
And I guess the challenge is, do I have a fixed mindset? Do I have a growth mindset? That should be the question we're asking ourselves. Am I prepared to change what I've probably been doing over many years? You know, am I prepared to change that in order to try and get to the next level? And it's not just our players that have fixed mindsets and growth mindsets, it's also us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm in a very fortunate position because I work with a range of sports, and I think I'm really failing if I'm coaching in the same way as I was even a year ago, because I always need to be learning. And as I say, I'm in a very fortunate position where I see a lot of coaches coach across a range of different sports. But actually, it's great to see that. And I mean, events like this are really fantastic, because I often think as coaches, coaching can be a very lonely activity. And what we probably don't do enough as coaches is talk to other coaches and have opportunities to learn. So it's really important that we do that. And as you say, Jane, it's really important that we have growth mindsets as well, and really want to, you know, continually improve.
Yeah, we're probably preaching to the converted. That's why they're here, these people. Because
no, exactly. It's always the same.
Yeah.
Has anyone got any points? Because I've got a couple, if you don't mind. Oh, excellent. My turn to speak. I think that self-determination theory kind of resonates with me, because it almost summarizes what you actually have mentioned, and Jane has kind of reiterated. We can set up constraints or scenarios, but actually it's how, as coaches, we've got to think about, I don't need to give you the answer. I'll give you the question. I'll pose the question. I'll pose the structure, and then I'll ask another question to see if you've got an understanding of what's happened. And for me, that's my kind of read and thought. It's all about the group or the individuals in front of us that we're trying to have that longer term progression and development from. And I just I've been mulling it over while we've been there listening and so on. I think that's my takeaway from today. You know, a bit of reaffirming thoughts and ideas I've got, and also preach about, I suppose. And that's what I would really like and encourage people to think about. Be comfortable pushing forward, scenarios, structures, ideas. Think about your question. What have you learned in this situation? What have you improved on? What have you discovered? And it's nice to see both Jane and Mark nodding on my screen. It's great. So that's kind of my little summary for people if they want that as a bit of a takeaway. I don't know if you want to just, either one of you, have a bit of a summary for people.
I totally agree, Matt, and I think that, you know, I've heard lots of coaches say that their job at the end of the day is to make themselves redundant, and you know, to create an environment where actually your players are doing the work for you, and you know, as I say, when I give scenarios, I'll you know, often just say, okay, have a couple of minutes to say why that worked, why that didn't work, etc. And then they come up with it. They can see where things are happening, where they're not happening, and that's where you see learning taking place. And that's what you want. You want to see your players getting continually better, making better decisions, and, you know, becoming more skilled. And I think if you can create an environment that happens, then yeah, you're definitely moving in the right direction.
I would just like to reach out to everybody else, and you don't have to speak, you're all right, but if you could just type in the chat box just one thing that you've picked up tonight that you're going to be thinking about, that would be really useful, so that we know what things are being picked up and what other things that we could arrange these type of events for, because we just pull out things every so often and go, Mark, what can you speak on now? But you know, I think there are some useful topics. I'm not sure I understand that bit.
Probably mindset, is it?
I'm going mindset.
Okay. Mindset. So my mind was well on that one. Yeah, did you see that question, Mark?
No.
From Martha. She said that she's got small children, so she can't unmute, but with an academy system and young players coming together from different backgrounds, friendship groups, how can coaches build a communal feeling for these players rather than just delivering content?
I think that the time that athletes spend with each other whilst they're at a training session is really important, and it is learning time. So I would plan time in where you encourage your players to spend some time together, give them some tasks, ask them some questions, but give them some time together to come up with those, so they build those relationships while they're there. And if it's very focused about what they're doing, they tend to be very engaged in that as well then. So that would be my suggestion.
Is that like the dreaded icebreakers, Mark?
Well, no, I'd say, you know, if you're working on a particular, you know, if you're looking at creating space or whatever, then actually plan some time for them. Give them a task that is around creating space. So you give them a scenario, they work through the scenario, and then give them some time to ask each other questions about, well, how do we do that? Where was the space created, etc. So they work together to come up with some of the answers.
Yeah, no, agree. There's a question from Tom.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Which says, how can we support the development of intrinsically motivated academy players to encourage personal improvement outside of the session? Oh, sorry, Tom, you could have spoken.
Well, I was happy to unmute. Well, it was more a point and a question, really, Mark, all rolled into one, being greedy. My my take on certainly the boys' academy, I can't speak for the women's, but I dare say it's a similar structure, that actually our contact time, although enormously valuable to us, isn't going to get us where we want to go. And it's how we develop that level of intrinsic motivation, that the players take ownership of their own development well beyond us. And that actually, I mean, I've said this to the parents, I think that their support networks will play just as big a role as we will with coaches. But just any thoughts, any ideas, any tips, experiences that have worked, how we can get them training outside of training?
Yeah, and I think, as you say, it's very, very difficult to do that. I think that people often think coaching academies or counties or national teams is easy because you've got your best players, but the time that you've got with them is so limited. It is actually often more difficult. So I think that when I'm in that situation, I try to plan not just for the session, but what I want them to achieve between sessions. Whether that is physical, whether it is psychological, or whether it is skills based. And then actually at the end of a session, send them away. And when I've been working with sevens teams, because there's less of them, I can almost do that on an individual basis, which tends to be even more useful. But if you can't do it on an individual basis, whether it's as units or whether it's as the team as a whole, potentially give them some work-ons that you expect them to come back with and be able to demonstrate that they actually have worked on them. And now I've, through these sort of means, being able to have those conversations between sessions and even shared videos and shared practices, etc., that have allowed that sort of between times learning to take place.
So I think we have that capacity, don't we, Martin, through Moodle? So if coaches have videos that they want uploading, we can upload them.
We do, yeah. It's I think it's quite easy and straightforward, and like we've done already, we can certainly look at teams as well with little breakouts and so on.
Really appreciate that, Mark, and it's actually just made me think of something else to help with the intrinsic motivation. Does that work the other way? Could players be encouraged to upload videos back to their own Moodle site? Can that work, Martin? I don't know whether we've got the functionality to do that, have we?
Oh, we'd have to look at upload, what the memory is and so on.
Yeah. But yeah, if it came the other way and they really took ownership, that idea of kind of autonomy and self-directed learning that you're describing, Mark.
Absolutely.
Thank you, much appreciated.
I'm very conscious we've been on for 55 minutes. Has anyone got any other points that they want to raise before we kind of let Mark go and make a cup of tea and refresh and get his brain back? No? Great. Well, as ever, really appreciative of everyone's time. Big thank you, Mark, again for sharing your ideas and thoughts and bringing a bit of theory to life as well, which you always put context to. So that's great as well. Just to reiterate kind of Jane's point, those of you on the call, if you've got any kind of ideas or topics that you think you would like us to delve deeper into, again, please let us know. So I'll make sure Jason provides my email address when he asks for feedback as well. So any ideas, share with me and we can start developing that. But again, big thank you to everyone for your time this evening.
Thanks all.
Great stuff. You're all free to go.
Thanks. Bye.
You're all dismissed.
Thanks very much for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.